morning, everyone. How are you all this morning? Thanks for coming back and visiting me here on a Sunday morning. Um, it's a nice, quiet. It's almost 7 a.m. Still a little dark outside. We haven't gotten to sunrise yet. And this is January 28th. So we're 4 weeks into the year. I hope that next week you will come back. I want to do an update on my recycling and let you know how far I've gotten towards my 2,000 pound challenge that I'm doing this year. Kind of upping my game a little bit. Last year I did 1,000 and I exceeded it. This year I want to do 2,000 and see if I can kind of push the limits of what I'm recycling. But today I wanted to talk about a book I'm reading. And for those of you who have been following me for over 3 years, Peggy Hellblame's Garden What You've Got really came out of almost 4 years ago. My husband saying, you know, you have an awful lot of like little things that you do in the garden that younger people or maybe people just starting out gardening don't have. They don't do. They go to the store and they buy it and they don't think about using what they have and turning it either into something, a garden product, or something that they can use in the garden. Even little things like your banana peels, soaking your banana peels, dehydrating them. You know, I mean, just baking soda, Epsom salt, all those little things. So that was how Garden What You've Got started. And I had already been raising worms since 2009, and I never even thought of it as raising worms. I did it for the idea of just kind of, you know, the lessening my trash that went out. And in doing that, I was raising worms. I was keeping them alive. I was only doing it for myself. I wasn't doing it to sell. And excuse me, I'm still fighting this cough and cold. It's lessening, but it still got me a little bit. But anyway, that was the reason I started. I've always been kind of an organic gardener. I don't like the idea of spraying things. There was a time when we had an orchard in North Florida and we thought that was going to be our life. And people used, I mean, Roundup was like, you didn't buy it in small. We had 14 acres and we had three acres, a little bit, maybe 4 acres in chestnuts and persimmons planted. And that was what you did. You sprayed for weeds, you sprayed for bugs, you sprayed for everything. And it was very chemical. And the people who were trying to go organic, it was like, oh my goodness, they were really jumping through hoops. But that's for another day. Today I wanted to do, I hate to say book report because that always sounds like I have a nun standing off my right shoulder with her either ruler or pointer ready to smack me. I would rather just say a book sharing. And this particular book is called Worms Eat My Garbage. Now, the first time I looked at it, probably the first few hundred times I looked at this book, I went, worms eat my garbage, like I was yelling at them and commanding them to sit up straight and eat their garbage. But Mary Appelhof, who is a biology teacher, and she died, I think, in the 90s. I think I have that on a note somewhere. 2005. I'm sorry. She was born in 1936 and she died in 2005. So she was only 69 years old. I would love to have had her live to be 100 and I could I could still be listening to her. Cute little lady. I've seen pictures. Cute little lady. She looks like a little muffin. Uh, she's got the little Buster Brown haircut. Not real glammed, but a cute little soul. And she had her master's in biology and teaching. So how perfect. And a teacher who really lives in her subject. You have teachers who are English teachers who maybe just do nothing more than correct you on your diagrams and your grammar, etc., etc. But she really seemed to, walk the walk and talk the talk. So when she was 32, this is back in 1972. I would have been 22 at the time, so she's a little older than me by 14 years. She wrote a pamphlet on basically on where worms eat my garbage kind of thing. And if you sent her a quarter in a self-addressed stamped envelope, she would send you this pamphlet. And she was interviewed many times, and they would say, well, did you sell many of those? And she said, yeah, I did. I sold 100,000 of them. It took 20 years, but she sold 100,000. Only $25,000, but over 20 years. It wasn't a great moneymaker. I'm sure this book isn't a great moneymaker, but it is a good book and a book to share. I got it on Amazon. I think it was $14, something like that. For those of you who know AJ's Green Topics, if you know Anne over at Plant Obsessed, they both have Amazon stores. And if you go on there, they have those books in their Amazon stores. You don't pay any more for it, and they get a little percentage of it. So I'll give them a shout out. Anyway, this book, it's, come on, 158 pages, plus everything extra. And it's now being done by Joanne Olszewski and forward by Amy Stewart. And I'm not sure who actually does the artwork, but it's very cute. It's all kind of elementary, just little sketches and what have you. But the book itself, let's get into that. Anyway, anything more about Mary? I wanted to say she self-published this book in 1982, and the book itself, is what sold the 100,000 copies over the 20 years to 2002. But she does tell the story that she sold, how many copies of her little pamphlet. And they kind of, I think worms really, I don't want to say consumed her life, but she thoroughly enjoyed having them in her life. And I can relate to that because every day I get up and I go, well, who am I going to check on today? And who am I going to see today? And now that I'm doing outside compost, I just pick them up and I go, okay, well, let's see how old you are and see what you're up to and see what you're doing. And they're incredible, incredible creatures. Anyway, the importance of this book, excuse me, how to set up and maintain a worm composting system. She's a real 1-2-3 gal. She makes it easy. She makes it simple. The book isn't, it's not a page turner like, a James Patterson novel. I'll give it that. You really, you want to think about sitting down and reading it and maybe take some notes. I kind of go through it and go, oh yeah, oh, did I read that before? I wanted to show you, you know, choosing the right worm bin. Uh, she she goes through different things. I wanted to make sure that I covered all the subjects that she did give, and she has, for instance, the right location, the right worms. Now, if my friend Sandra at Nana's Worms and Gardens, if she came from Vancouver Island and she was somehow able to smuggle some of her wonderful Canadian uh, big boy earthworms and bring them to me, well, that would be sure death because I'm here at the other end. You know, she's up at this end of North America and I'm down at the other end in Central Florida. And excuse me. And I have heat, but I don't really have that much cold. January, we've had uh, 4 or 5 nights in the 40s. I had to bring my worms inside, and those are the red wigglers. They would have survived, but I didn't want them to be uncomfortable. Canadian night crawlers, or her Vancouver worms, they're strutting. They think it's great. Here, if we got to the heat of summer, that wouldn't be just a temporary thing. It would be day after day, week after week, 2, 3 months in a row. They wouldn't survive. Just the same as the Louisiana jumpers, I think is what their name is, or if you had African night crawlers and you took them up to North Canada, they couldn't survive. So pick the right worms. Pick the right worm bins. She goes through and explains worm bins. She also shows how to build wooden worm bins, which I thought was kind of cool because, I mean, everybody grabs plastic, but, 20, 30 years ago, people were still using a lot of wood products, and plastic wasn't such a big part of our lives. And so she talks about that. She also discusses picking the right foods. There's always some controversy on, whether you can feed your worms oranges, onions, chocolate. Is that it? I'm trying to think if there's anything else. But if you give any creature something small enough that they're kind of allergic. I don't even want to say that it's kind of maybe more adverse to their health. And yet we have other worm growers who will dump in a bag of oranges. Gaetano, the worm guy, Northeast Worms, I think is the name of his channel. Excellent, also an excellent channel. He was showing this huge worm bin that he keeps. And he threw it, he had a 5-pound bag of worms, 5-pound bag of oranges, fresh oranges, threw them in there, and he said the worms just went crazy. Did they die? No. Did they choke a little? No. It was. So anyway, that's another thing. It's. I think she tells it like, if you are going to give anybody food that's on the list, small amounts. Think about the size of your worm bin. I have Dick and Jane, my shoebox worm bins that you guys have seen me turn over and use. I give them a little bit of food. If I put in a pound of chocolate, I probably wouldn't have Dick and Jane. So use your common sense. God gave it to you for a reason. Use it. I swear to God, if you use your common sense, it's not like you're using it up. It will regenerate itself, just like the worms. And also the amount of food. As I just said, Dick and Jane, if I gave them huge amounts of food, the food wouldn't have the food has to break down on its own with the help of bacteria. The microbes get in there. The worms eat the bacteria. The worms aren't just sitting there waiting at the table for you to chop up food and bring it to them. They go, nom, 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 nom. No, they have to wait for their pals, bacteria, to form on it so that they can eat it and take it into their crop and into their gizzard. And that's where the food gets, that's where all the big work gets done. The bacteria is done, the, big explosion of, oh boy, we're ready to help you guys and please eat us next. So these are, I just tried to break that down so that even kids would understand, and I hope anybody just starting out goes, well, that's funny, but it explains it, doesn't it? She also discusses pests and critters, and boy, what a big difference. Back when I started in 2009, if I had seen mites in my can of worms, I would have gone nuts. I really would have. This past year, I saw the unicorn snails. They got brought in on an Australian pine tree leaf, and they're not really leaves, but the branch that has the little pine needles on it. And somehow, I'm sure that's how it happened, I put them on Jack and Jill, my big oblong worm bins that are raised up. They were really planters. Anyway, I had snails, and I'm going, ooh, snails. But they were so cute. They're called a unicorn because they have like a little unicorn shell on the end of them. And I mean, they were tiny. Maybe the largest one got to be, I could have put maybe 10 or 15 on my little pinky nail. That's how tiny they were. I think the 1 to 2 centimeters is their full growth size, at least what I read and the ones that I saw. So if I had seen that 14 years ago, I would have gone, no, I'm not keeping any of this. No, I don't want this. It wasn't in my kitchen, but where I keep my can of worms. But since then, we've learned to tolerate. Jane at Rockin' Worms, another good channel, mentioned that when she first saw the mites, she kind of went, "Ooh, that's not a good idea." Red mites can eat your worms or attack them or whatever. So you really want to make sure that you don't have red mites. But these are just like a little white speck moving along, and they rely heavily on moisture. If your bin is not moist, mites are going to go. They can't survive. Well, they're not going to go anywhere, but they're going to die. So if I lift the lid of my can of worms in the morning and I see the mites, I can do two things. I can take it out and wash it out and lessen that whole population, or I can just lift the lid. As the day goes on and it dries out, those mites just drop like a stone. And at night when I go to put the lid back on, I can just see like a gathering of little dead bodies. And the mites have chitin in their shell. I mean, they're that so minuscule. But the chitin that would drop back into the worm bin is going to be eaten by the worms, who don't bother the mites when they're alive, but when they're dead and they're strictly a shell and chitin, they will consume them. And or maybe the bacteria gets to it first. I'm not sure the progression of that, but so the worms are actually getting healthier. So see how our mindset changes from ooh to good for you. You eat that. That's good for you. Mussels, And so if you get a chance, This is the 35th edition, and that it's sold over 200,000 copies since it was published originally in 1982. So we're coming up on 42 years of this book, and I don't know who's making the benefits now. I hope Mary Arlene. I think she was Catholic. I think was she went to a Catholic girls' school or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm just. Anyway, she's funny. I mean, she's not Don Rickles kind of funny. She's not Bob Hope kind of funny, but she's funny. She's a humorous way of telling the tale. And again, it's only, what did I say, 150 some pages. It's pretty much a quick read. I'm about maybe a little half, 2/3 finished with it. And when I have a minute, I'll sit down and I start to read it, and then I go, I ought to start from the beginning and read that book again. And so I probably read the front part about 5 times, and kind of some of the stories of Mary Appelhof. And so, I won't hold you up all morning. I hope you like this series of me reviewing books. I'm not a great reader. I never was a great reader. I'm the dyslexic kid that the nuns used to go, where did she get that word? And so I really have to discipline myself into reading and really think about what I'm reading. And I have so far enjoyed this book. I think it's certainly a worthwhile book. So in the future, in the past I did the Worm Farmer's Handbook, which Rhonda Sherman, and I still go back to this for reference. Hopefully in the future I'll be doing Dirt to Soil. Gabe Braun, if you haven't gone on YouTube and checked him out, he's a regenerative soil guy from North Dakota, which is where my husband was born and raised. So we kind of have to mention that one. But anyway, that'll be it. Next week, I hope you guys will come back and see me, and we'll discuss how much I've been able to recycle in 5 weeks. And maybe some of you will help me along and think of some extra ways that I could possibly be adding to that recycling. So I'll leave you go. Happy Sunday. Remember, garden what you've got, use what you've got at hand, and I hope to see you again next week. Bye-bye.